Thank you all very much. Yeah, I do enjoy coming back here. And I just thought that maybe you tried to book me so far out you're thinking maybe I might break a leg or something before I don't have to come back. All right, let me do a little warm-up tune, and then I'll, get the sound and all that jazz right, and we'll see if we can get into our set here. Y'all doing pretty good? Did you get your bellies full and all that? All right, good deal. I'm tired of working for a living. You could call it living at all. Foot on a pedal full, we'll spin. Walk down to a crawl, y'all. That ain't living at all. No, no, no. I'm tired of pinching them pennies, swinging that hammer and buzzing them saw. Boss get the money, ain't seeing it. Leaning back against the wall. That ain't living at all. No, no, no. Well, my heart keeps a beating, hopping and thumping all day long, sweating and singing that same old song. I may be breathing, my body ain't 6 feet under yet, but I'm dang sure working myself to death, and that ain't living at all. No, no, no. That ain't living long, not at all. Well, I need a good bag of rubbing, 7 days on and no time off. Woman at home missing my loving, ought to be against the law. That ain't living at all. No, no, no. Well, my heart keeps a beating, pumping and thumping all day long, sweating and singing that same old song. I may be breathing, my body ain't 6 feet under yet, but I'm dang sure working myself to death, and that ain't living that ain't living that ain't living at all. No, 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 that ain't living long. Not at all. Woo! All right. Can everybody hear me out there? Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. You might want to turn it down back there, Randy. So I couldn't remember the last time I was here. I guess would have been, 10 or 12 years ago, right? And I had embarked on, I guess it was probably early this year, I started playing a lot of listening rooms, and I was actually putting together the set list in such a way as to be have that set list become a prelude to my little memoir that I released earlier this year, and I've been doing some shows to kind of support it. And anyway, I couldn't remember if the last time I was here I had it, but I guess not, because it didn't come out until 2025. And now that I know exactly what's in it, I think I'll do a better job of kind of introducing it. But, I've been doing this a long time, probably around, I think it's probably about 30 years now in some capacity. And I've been, 20 of those years were in Nashville. A few years before I moved to Nashville, and then 20 years in Nashville, and it's been quite a crazy ride. And then I spent full time on the road down here in Texas, probably a good 6 or 7 years. So I guess that adds up to more than 30 years. Okay, well, I've never been big on math, and don't ask me how old I am either. So anyway. But we're still in it. I was talking to Bubba about that. We're still doing it, and I guess if you're still a little bit in the game, you're doing better than not being in the game at all. But my journey was pretty crazy. I was playing music pretty much for I was doing it for money before I moved to Nashville. I was doing pretty good on my friends. Bagged groceries and did some other things, and I had a band, and so that was a lot more fun for me, right? And we were playing a bunch of crazy places, and then started landing some of the deals at the fairs and festivals and started getting really busy in my hometown and then the tri-state area. And finally ran into this producer who came up to see a show of mine. Actually, he called me on the phone first, and I didn't know who he was. He told me his name, and I'm like, so how did you get my number again? And he's like, well, I got it from a friend of mine who, knows you. You did some records here. And I said, well, okay, man. Can I call you right back? So I hung up the phone. And I called a buddy of mine over at a radio station in Kentucky, her name was, she called herself the Sarge in Charge. She was the morning show host. Radio people have to have these names. Yeah. She called herself the Sarge in Charge. WTCR is a big station over there. So I told her, I just got this call. It's kind of a creepy thing because I don't know how this guy got my number. And they said his name was Buddy Cannon, She said, and there was silence on the other end, like she didn't say anything for like 30 or 40 seconds. And finally the silence broke, and she said, did you just say that Buddy Cannon called you, like, at your house? And I said, yeah, he got my number. Like, is this guy stalking me or what? Who is this guy? It was one of these shysters, And she's like, well, he's the head of A&R, at Polydor, Polygram, Mercury Records, right? And he's like, I can't believe he called you. So I got to do a little this was before the internet, okay? So y'all kind of have to give me a pass on this. So anyway, I called around. She told me that he'd produced, a few people like George Jones and, some of the country music acts, and he wound up producing a lot of other people. Vern Gosdin, who's that? So once I found that out, I was like, well, I guess I probably should call him back, And essentially what he did was I was kind of on my way to go somewhere else, to another school, and so I decided, well, if he wants to talk to me, and he offered me a record deal, and I went down to Nashville, and once I got there, we went in the studio and cut like 4 or 5 sides together, and I thought, well, this is really kind of cool, but it's strange, right? And then about, a week later, after we got our sides done, A&M out of California bought them out, and it was over, right? It's like, yeah. So I have, just so you know, I'll jump to the end of the book. I have ended many, many labels in Nashville, Tennessee. They do not last long when they sign me up, But anyway, I signed a writing deal instead. I was writing my own songs, and I, ran into a publisher who kind of liked what I was doing. His name was Tom Collins, which is appropriate because I had a lot of that the first few years of my stint in Nashville. And then he really liked my stuff, and we got to, he was the first to believe in me and all that jazz. And it was kind of, I got into the songwriting part of it, So I wrote songs. I thought everybody wrote songs. I didn't know that, people could actually cut your songs, So anyway, Tom was great, except for he had a master's in psychology. So he liked to play mind games with all the anxiety-ridden songwriters, which I was one, absolutely. There were a lot of us there. And anyway, one day he took us all in and he said, okay, enough is enough. We have to make money doing what we do. And all you wonderful balladeers, and of course he's talking to me, I saw him look at me out of the corner of his eye. That's all fine and dandy to be artsy-fartsy, but, I'm in this business to make some money, right? So no more songs over 3 minutes long. No more ballads, absolutely no more ballads, and absolutely no more waltzes. If you write a waltz, I'm just not even going to listen to it, right? So, in my regular Tony Ramey fashion, I, with all the rest of the writers, walked over to this real cool little place, a Mexican restaurant called Las Palmas, and we proceeded to have several pitchers of margaritas at about noon, and by the time 2 o'clock rolled around, I was fairly inebriated. Let's see. I stumbled back across the street. I wasn't driving. And went up to the room, and I was writing with this little gal by the name of Nettie Music, and she said, Tony, what are we going to do now? I mean, you have any up-tempo ideas? And I was like, no. and I don't want any up-tempo ideas. Being the rebel I was, I said, we're going to write a song that's a waltz. And she goes, Tony, we can't do that. And I said, not only is it going to be a waltz, it's going to be a slow waltz. And she's like, Tony, you're going to get us fired, you know. And I said, don't worry, contract's good for a year. And not only that, I said, it's going to be a long song. And she said, do you have an idea? And I said, yeah, you bet I've got some ideas. So I said, we're going to write this song called I Don't Want This Song to End. And anyway, we wrote it about 20 minutes, I guess. I don't really remember writing it, but I do know we wrote it because it was my first gold record in Nashville as a songwriter. And it goes a little something like this. Kind of taught me a little lesson. Don't listen to your publisher, whatever you do. So let me see if I can remember here. Well, I don't want to hear last call, and I don't want to look at the clock on the wall. Let's lose track of time while we're dancing this close. And I don't really care if no one's around. We can just stay right here till the moon goes down. If it were left up to me, I would never let go. And if this is a dream, then I don't want to wake up, see the sun shining in. As long as you're in my arms, I don't want this song to end. Let me look in your eyes and count the stars. Let me hold you tight next to my heart, and I whisper I love you for the rest of my life. And let's make believe the music plays for just you and me, and make the world go away. Long as you're here with me, you will always be mine. And if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up, see the sun shine again. As long as you're in my arms, I don't want this song to end. And if this is a dream, I don't want to wake up, see the sun shine again. As long as you're in my arms, I don't want this song to end. Woo, thank y'all very much. So, just so y'all know, I did 3 of those choruses at the end just to aggravate Tom. And I played it a little bit slower, too, than that. But to his credit, Tom was a song man, right? And that's kind of how he made his living. He produced so many great artists, Barbara Mandrell, Ronnie Milsap, Charlie Pride. He had the history, And after I played it, Nettie was on the couch on the other side of the room, and she was just kind of waiting for the hammer to, come down, the shoe to drop. And thank you. Are you trying to tell me something here? Just kidding. I'm getting a little froggy. I'll probably get this way a little.
Give us some breath mints.
Don't get his mouth too spray. So he did say after I played, he said, "Well, it's a hit. I guess we need to go in and demo it tomorrow." So we went into the studio, did it all up, and then went over to Al Cooley at Atlantic Records, and Al hated it. Right? I don't need a ballad, but there were two up tempos that he really loved on the same CD. They weren't mine. Right? So he circled one of the up tempos and he said, "This one right here is it. This is the next big hit for old, John Michael." He sent the CD up. The next day, John Michael called our publisher and he said, "I want to put that there song on hold y'all sent me the other day. Yeah, man, that's a good one." And so Vanessa was my little plugger gal. And she said, "Is it so-and-so, the up-tempo?" She was sure it was. He goes, No, that waltz, that ballad. Man, I love that song. And so that was my first gold record, right, as a songwriter. And it came out on the record he cut with Chubba Pettox. And it did go gold. His record before that, he sold 1.5 million. And then I shut down that label, and he sold 500,000. I think he went 750,000, though. I think he did pretty good. Made a pretty good haul on that one. But at any rate, it was, it was kind of a little shot in the arm to have a gold record. I'd only been in town about, about a year and 3 months, and so I was kind of hot dogging it around. I was like, oh, yeah. And I was thinking to myself, all these songwriters in town are really struggling. And I was like, why do they think it's so hard? What are they talking about, right? And so what was crazy is that not too long after I wrote that tune, right, it took a while to get it on the record and all that, I was sitting in the lobby and one of my co-writers had actually had to cancel because he was not feeling good that day. And there was another dude that was sitting in the lobby, and his name was Chris Bergsness, and he'd written a bunch of big songs, and I didn't know he was. Kind of introduced himself. He was sort of one of these ADHD spazzes, So he just saw me that there, and I made eye contact accidentally with him, and he started talking to me, "Where'd you from? Where you go? What are you doing here? So you just signed at Tom's, and all that stuff." And I was like, "Oh, who's this guy?" So Tom comes along, and somebody had canceled on him that day, and Tom walked down the hall and said, "Hey, what are y'all doing?" Because if he saw us sitting around in a lobby, we're supposed to be writing songs, So he walked down the hallway, and I remember Chris said, "We're writing a song. I'm writing with your new boy here, Tony." And I was like, what is he talking about? And Tom said, "Oh, that's good." I didn't want to say no, we're not, because it'd mean I wasn't working. And so I just kind of went with it. And he said, "Yeah, we're working on a song right now. It's a real big smash, Tom." And Tom said, "Well, what is it?" I'm like, "Oh, man, this is getting even worse, right?" And he said, "Well, it's a song we're working on called it's called Nothing But Smoke Between Me and My Old Flame." And Tom goes, "I love that. I want to hear it. Come on down to my office." And my eyes were like quarters, I was staring a hole through him. And I was like, what is this guy trying to get me dropped from the first deal I ever had? I was like, man, I'm gonna do something to this guy, Tom walked back down the hall, and Chris said, "Oh, man, we're not quite done with it yet, Tom, but we'll be done with it by tomorrow." And this was like 2 p.m. And Tom's like, "Okay, first thing in the morning, come play it for me." And after he walked down the hall, went to his office, I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing? I don't even know who you are." He said, "Man, we better get started on this idea." So we wrote and wrote and wrote, and then finally, way into the wee hours of the morning at his place, he shared a room with somebody who would come, good friends of mine, who's producing a bunch of acts right now. we were over there, and it was like 4 a.m., and we were working on this song. I mean, I didn't think we were going to do it, you know. It's late at night. I was about to fall asleep, and then I was like, man, I got to take a break. We had everything except for the hook. I just couldn't fit the hook in that little melodic thing that I felt was going to be where the smash was. I liked the rest of it. And I said, man, I'm going to have to take a break. You're going to fix another pot of coffee because I can't do it anymore. I've been drinking too much, you know. He said, okay. He goes in there, and I turn the TV on to kind of wake myself up a little bit. And while I was watching that TV, a commercial came on, and I'm like, that's it. So this song was on record, on Kenny Chesney's record, right after the one where he had When I Close My Eyes, and they went in and cut it, and it was going to be a big to-do. This wasn't long after my first cut. It was like 3 or 4 months, and I was like, what is everybody struggling about over here? You know, this is Kenny Chesney, and anyway, unfortunately though, it was the first of many. He cut it, but it didn't make the record. But Tom always loved the song, and so did Buddy. And the commercial, I'll never forget, I owe much to, because many people have cut this song, independent artists, since then. Myself included, but I'm not talking about just me, right? Smoke-filled room, empty glass, familiar voice, I'm out of the past. Says, boy, you know you sure haven't changed. She sat down, we talked a while, till an old love song made her smile. And I asked her to dance, she said, well, okay. Went round and round, dancing and laughing, round and round, stirring the ashes like two lost fools, searching for fire in the rain. But there was nothing but smoke between me and my old flame. Can't blame me, can't blame her, it's nobody's fault. We're not who we were, I guess old friends is what we were meant to be. So let love lie when it dies, well that's what they say. Maybe they're right, but for one slow dance, it was still just her and me. And we went round and round, dancing and laughing, round and round, stirring the ashes like two lost fools, searching for fire in the rain. But there was nothing but smoke between me and my old flame. No, there was nothing but smoke between me and my old flame. Reese's peanut butter cup. I'll deny I said that too, Randy. This is going worldwide. I'll just say, no, they clipped it in. It was AI. So anyway, I had, a real close call with that song several times. Matter of fact, many, many years afterwards, I was out at Buddy Cannon's house, who brought me down there in the first place, and he loved that song for Kenny. It just didn't work out. They had too many songs and all that kind of stuff. And this was like, 11 or 12 years later, and Buddy and I had become friends and saw each other here and there. I was at his house, and we were doing a little guitar pull, and he goes, Tony, you still, man, play that Smoke song. You still got, I hadn't played anything yet. And he's like, play that Smoke song, man. I was like, well, I've written other songs by, since then, but anyway, it was pretty cool. So, yeah, Tom was, a different animal. By the time I left there, I was wearing a heart monitor because he was playing mind games with all the riders, and so I was convinced that I was going to die at any moment. And that was my journey to out of hypochondriasis, but that's a different story altogether, one I won't go into tonight. But he was just sort of that way, he liked to give you a lot of reason for doubting, right, and angst. And I really realized later on that he probably gave us that little meeting, that little pep talk, which wasn't really a pep talk. It was one that threw us into a drunken stupor over at Las Palmas and scared us to death. But I think he did it because he wanted us to dig a little deeper. Instead of thinking about what we're writing, maybe just write something that's really good and that we really love, right? Or write something just out of spite. Sometimes that works too, right? So many years, I guess I was with Tom a couple of years, right? And then I moved over to a little place on the 18th Avenue there. It was a little building. It was the old Loretta Lynn house way, way back in the day. A lot of history in that house. I mean, if you go back a little ways, Loretta Lynn had a publishing company there at that little house. And then I think there was a time there in between. It was some kind of a weird massage parlor, but we don't talk about that. That was the basement. We never went down there, by the way. But anyway, so by the time I signed there, they had turned the front porch into a little sunshine room. They put windows and walled it in, and that was kind of my room, the sunshine room. And for a time there at that company, Muy Bueno Music, I was the only writer, which made me really nervous because I was like, okay, so are y'all getting out of the business altogether, or am I the only one, right? But I wound up being over there for 8.5 years, which is a crazy sort of amount of time to be at any one publishing house. Most publishing companies will keep you around for a couple of years, and then it's time to, fly. And it took them 8.5 years to feel sorry enough for me that, So I hung around there for a while, but I went in to that little company, Muy Bueno Music, and met with Irv Woolsey, who became a really good friend of mine, a champion of my songwriting and music. And I guess it was the second or third year there when I guess I'd graduated to the point to where when the owner came to town, I could actually go meet and maybe talk to him, right? And, of course, the owner was George Strait, right, who still lived in the Dominion down there in around San Antonio and Bernie. And I think it was probably, I think I was 2 years in, maybe, that deal. And Eddie Tidwell, who was managed my catalog there, and I was writing really hard and doing the best I could. I went down there and said hello to Eddie at the other building because he was meeting with Tom, and we were walking back up to the writers' building where I was going to have a little writing appointment that day. And Eddie said, well, George is coming town today. So and I was like, okay, yeah, he's cutting a record. Well, you want to play him some songs, or, what do you want to do? And I was like, okay, wait, hold on here. So you saying, like, play him some songs, like, on my guitar? Like, play him some songs? And Eddie's like, yeah, that's kind of what you're supposed to do. And I'm like, okay, so I go in the sunshine room, and, I have to get my brown bag out and do the, Anyway, I do remember going down there, and it was kind of a blur, but it was the first time I got to play live for George, and I kid you not, and this is in the book, I detail this out specifically because it was such a traumatic experience for me. It's a little PTSD from it. I sat down at George took me back to the office. I thought maybe his whole entourage was going to go back in the back office of the Irv Woolsey Company building, and no, that's not how he worked. George was like, well, all right, how many songs you got? And I was like, well, I didn't know what to say. I was like, I don't want to say too many because he might like, oh, no way, And I said, well, just a couple, I got a couple of new ones you might like, but it's okay, man. If you're busy today, he's like, it's all right. Come on back, super laid back. And he leads me back to his office. I'm like, why isn't anybody else coming? I turned and looked at Eddie. I'm like, hey, man, are you coming? He's like, no, come. So I go in the office. He shuts the door behind him, and he's at this big desk, and the only chair is the one sitting in front of the desk, or behind the desk. And so he sits in his chair, and it's a swivel, one of those plush leather lean back, And he puts his big boots up on the desk, and he's got a baseball in his hand. And he's like, well, what you got, And he's tossing the ball up. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to sit here because I don't have a guitar strap, So I sit down. And this leather chair is like the worst leather chair you've ever seen. It's like it sinks like 10 inches down into the chair. So I'm like sitting there like this. There are arms, I can't really reach over the arms, And I'm like, this is the most humiliating live performance, I've ever done. And so he sits there for a while, and I played this one song that I just knew he was going to cut. And he goes, after I was done with the whole song, 3 minutes and 15 seconds of it, and I was really getting into it too, I even tuned down so I made sure George could sing it. Right? And anyway, I played it, and he was still tossing the ball up. And he goes, yeah, I think I heard that one. And I'm like, what do you mean you think you heard it? He said, I think I heard that one. They sent that to me on a tape, I think, in a box. And I was like, Mr. Straight, you can tell me if you've heard it before. I'll just go on to something. He goes, nah, that's all right. So I just wasted like 3 minutes. I played another song, and the second song, he loved it. It's called Make Her Love Me, I think was the name of the song. It's up tempo, And he goes, I like that one. You got that on a tape, And so I was like, no, but I can get it there pretty quick. So I go put it down on tape, throw it to him. Second year, I'm thinking, all right, George Strait cut, right? The, king of country music cuts, right? And so the next day, run down to the office and talk to Dottie. He's gone to the studio. I'm like, he cut it right. She's like, no, he had a cold today. He didn't want to learn anything new. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just lost out to the sniffles because George didn't want to learn a new song. So it took me a little while to get a George Strait song recorded. But I finally did. And it was on the way out. I think he was just like, man, he probably told Eddie, if you get rid of that guy, I'll cut one of his songs, So anyway, it was a pretty exciting little moment for me. And I was actually on my way down here to Texas. I wrote this with a really good friend of mine from Grand Isle, Louisiana, Gordon Bradbury. It's called Hot Grease and Zydeco. I heard the music Big Daddy played. Well, that gumbo coming through that old crane door. Fans are blowing, flies are buzzing, people jitterbugging on that hardwood floor. I work my finger down to the bone. I make the money, spend it on a hot grease and Zydeco. Feed my belly, feed my hungry soul. Say show. So hot. My baby loving, deep fried, golden brown legs and that long black hair. We get to cooking when we kiss, no time at all lost. She take me there. Down on the bayou to stir it up. Tastes so good I can't get enough of a hot breeze and Zydeco. Feed my belly, feed my hungry soul. It's Friday night to let the good time roll. But hot breeze and Zydeco. Hey, hey. Say show. It's gonna break down now. A hot breeze and Zydeco. Feed my belly, feed my hungry soul. It's Friday night to let the good time roll. But hot breeze and a hot breeze and a hot breeze and a Zydeco. Hey, hey. Oh, man. We had a lot of fun that day writing that song. You can imagine. So, when I came over there, though, my first year over there anyway, I was coming off a couple of top 40 hits, Billboard hits, so I was kind of high on cloud nine, except for leaving Tom's, because even though I had grown to hate him, with a heart monitor on, I still loved him, Ryan, because he was the guy that gave me my first shot, and my first gold record and all of that. And my first actually single was out of the Tom Collins catalog, radio single. But I do remember hearing that this guy by the name of Doug Stone was going to record a song of mine. And I loved Doug Stone, but he hadn't done anything, put anything out for 5 or 6 years. So I was like, oh man, if only it were 5 years ago, right? Anyway, they went in and recorded it, and I got a call from his assistant producer and said, man, Tony, I don't know what's going to happen with this thing. But what a song, man, we cut on Doug last night, And I was like, well, that just means I don't know what's going to happen. There's nothing that's going to happen now. So I didn't care that it was Doug Stone. And I went into the office, and this was right before Eddie came on board, Eddie Tidwell. He and I became really good friends. And there was a little gal there, and she, was kind of taking care of the catalog at the time. And I told her the good news because she hadn't even heard it yet. My publisher hadn't heard it. And I walked in and I said, hey, I got a Doug Stone cut last night. His new record on Atlantic. And she's like, well, nobody told me about it. And I'm like, I'm telling you about it right now, right? And I remember, I think she said something like, I don't know if that bridge is finished yet. And I'm like, well, it has to be. He just recorded it, So I thought, well, I mean, what does that mean? And so here goes the heart monitor. If only I'd have known then there was nothing wrong. But anyway, time goes on. A few weeks later, it cuts the song. They call it, it's the album cut, right? Makeup and Love is the name of the record's title cut. And I thought, well, at least I got the title cut. And then the first single was mine. And I was thinking, oh, man, if only it was 5 years ago. Well, time goes on. It's on the radio. I hear it come on the radio. I'm driving around Nashville, going to the Green Hills Mall to take my wife some tea. She was still working at the jewelry store. And it came on, and I was like, I turned it all the way up, and it was Doug Stone, right? He was singing my song on the radio. And some dude, I think I came to after a moment, and some dude was beside me driving the car going like, what is wrong with that dude? And I think I was in shock, and I got out of the car and threw my heart monitor away. Just kidding, I didn't do that yet, but it was a crazy feeling, you know. And what's even crazier is the least expected. We had the least of expectations for that song, and it just kept climbing and kept climbing. And every month I was like, okay, a new boat. This is another house. A couple of parties, right? Really nice car, right? Month after month, and it stayed up there for like 6.5 months. It was on and over 1 million performance plays, and that was the first time I got to smell Willie Nelson. I mean, meet Willie Nelson at at the BMI Awards show, as I got an award that year. But anyway, it was crazy, right? And so it's got a special place in my heart, you know. Doug does, and he's kind of retired now, and he and I became really good friends. And good dude. Bobby was a beautiful girl from a small town in a great big old world. Her daddy owned the corner store on the 7th Avenue. Danny Joe just turned 19, cigarettes rolled under his sleeve, his leather jacket and his faded jeans and a bad attitude. But it's hard to be tough when you're falling in love. He said, I know I'm down on my knees, but I wanna be the one, you're the only one, I'm begging you please. I know that I don't have that much, for whatever we don't have, I'll make up in love. Daddy was a simple man, raised Bobby with a real stern hand. Said he never would understand just what she saw in him. After working at the store all day, bringing in an honest day's pay, man, you should have seen his face when Danny Joe walked in, saying, please understand. With a ring in his hand, he said, I know I'm down on my knees, but I wanna be the one or only one, begging you please. And I know that I don't have that much, for whatever I don't have, I'll make up in love. Now he looks back and smiles, how they walk down the aisle. 20 years have gone by. He remembers it still, how she met his will, with a look in her eyes. Now he knows she was right when she said, Daddy, I'm down on my knees, but I wanna be the one who's only one, begging you please. And I know that we don't have that much, for whatever we don't have, we'll make up in love. For whatever they don't have, they make up in love. Woo! Goodness. Thank y'all very much. So one thing led to another, and I was in the thick of writing songs for a publisher. After my 7.5, 8.5 year stint, I guess, with Muy Bueno Music, I was on my way out the door. Eddie said he cried when I left. I didn't see him. Yeah, he's probably tears of joy, but because I was always going in there like checking my pulse, you know. Like, Eddie, what do you think of me? He's like, so he came out to my house once, though, and as the good friend that he was to me, he stole my physician's desk references and the Mayo Clinic book. I'd already read them, though. It didn't matter. So anyway, we became great friends and still remain great friends today. And I was on my way out, and this was, I think, 2007 or so. And there was a brand new company that was moving in an office in from New York City called Cherry Lane, New York. And Cherry Lane started with the catalog of Elvis Presley. Y'all remember Elvis, right? You know who that is. Okay, good. And then of course, John Denver was one of the very first. They started that catalog with him. And so they had all of these big New York artists right out there signed to it. I mean, John Carpenter, who was making all the movies at the time, you know, back in the 80s, and then had TV and, you know, commercials, right, all this stuff. It's really cool opportunities, you know. And anyway, I was the second signing there at that office, you know, ran into the gal who was running the show, and I was sort of a free agent at the time, and signed there. And it was an interesting run. There was one other guy who was right in there before me, and I stayed there for about 3.5 years. And it was a pretty interesting stint, you know. The New York people came out and they wanted to see what Nashville was all about, you know. And it was odd because I was the guy, the very first writer that they had ever sent the CEO of the company out to actually, like, visit the studio that I was going to be cutting sides in, right? And I was like, so is there a reason I should be concerned about the head of the company coming out? And he's like, no. She just kind of wants to see what's going on out here. And I'm like, I don't know that I'll be a really good, you know, introduction, you know. So anyway, she does, and she comes out. She was very sweet, and she sat in the corner. She really didn't say a whole lot, and I'm kind of like a weird dude, you know. I'm from the bowels of Appalachia, you know. You don't really. I was going back and forth with some of the guys, and anyway, by the end of the day, we had cut like 6 sides. I had everything, you know, charted out for them. We did it real fast, and I remember she walked up to me afterwards and said, "This was an amazing experience." And I was looking at her like, really? I thought, boy, New York people are easily entertained, right? But she had never quite seen a group of musicians come in and sit down and then roll through 6 tunes. Like in New York, apparently, you're lucky to get like 1 or 2 within 3 or 4 hours. And then when they're done and the clock strikes the 3rd hour, right, they're out. And the musicians union is like, you're not staying a minute longer, right? Nashville dudes is like, yeah, let me do that part one more time. I'm like, oh, yeah, but Chris, it's a little bit late, right? And he goes, oh, don't worry, I don't have to be anywhere after this, you know. So they're just sweet, sweet people, and so she was just super impressed by that. And then, of course, you know, once I got things rolling, I built a good catalog there. I was able to shut them down. So there you have it, right?
What was New York
But
based?
well, you know, they would come down, you know, and they loved coming to Nashville and hanging out and all that. We had a really good group of people there. But while I was there, I did get a lot of songs recorded by different people and had a pretty good catalog going. And it was kind of interesting because I thought it was going so well. But things like that happen, you know. Somebody bought them out, like BMG, right? Bought them out from Germany. So that was it for that, right? But I did write some stuff that wound up, you know, on some artists' records, you know, eventually. And probably one of my favorite ones after I moved to Texas down there, only about a year and a half, I moved to Texas, and I got a call from a little admin girl in Nashville, and I don't know how she had run across this song from the Cherry Lane catalog, because I'd written a bunch of them, but she said, "Hey, Tony, listen, I've got some really cool news for you." She said, "Do you have a lyric for a song that you could send me right quick? Because Ray Price wants to cut one of your tunes. You know, it's his last album, before he knew he was on his way out, right?" And I was like, I can type one up real quick, And the reason she wanted it to be quick was that he literally had like 2 or 3 weeks because he was real sick. He would go into the studio and be able to sing maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then he was out and he had to go lie down. So his last Sessions album, which was in the shelves of Cracker Barrel for a long time, I think it sold like 140,000 units like the first month or so, because it was his last album. And I was part of a little Ray Price tour with his widowed wife, Janie Price, who was very sweet. So I did a little tour with them and all the people who were involved in that album. But it was a crazy thing because it was one of those goosebump moments. And I said, "What's the title of the song that you want to sing?" She said, "Well, it's the one that he wants to record for Janie. And it's called When There's No More Songs to Sing." So I was like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can make it through this." But it's cut number 10 on that album, if you ever pick one up. Maybe it's still in Cracker Barrel, I don't know. When there's no more songs to sing, no music left in these old strings, no more words to rhyme, honey, there'll be time to fall in love again, to hold the hand of my best friend, for walking in the rain, whispering your name again. The world won't turn so fast, we'll make the moments last the way we always wanted to. Honey, me and you will do everything when there's no more songs to sing. You've always been right there, the answer to my every prayer, through the laughter and the tears. Just think of all the years we'll share. The world won't turn so fast, we'll make the moments last the way we always wanted to. Baby, me and you will do everything when there's no more songs to sing. We'll do everything when there's no more songs to sing. Woo! Thank you, Ray Price. May he rest in peace. And I heard the cut of it, I was like, because of all these lush strings and, it's a Ray Price record, like in a true blue form, right? So it was a beautiful, beautiful sounding record, and it's still somewhere out there for sale, right, on CD, and it's also on, Spotify and all of that stuff, right? So, and then when I started to come down to Texas quite often, right, I started to tour down here about 2004, 2005, pretty steady. And, I love Texas. and I consider myself officially a Texan now. And the reason I loved it so much is just, the land is so vast, and it was a different landscape than what I was used to. And I was touring way down in the Rio Grande Valley, and there would be miles and miles and hours of just nothing but mesquite and dirt and more dirt. And I used to think, man, no wonder cowboys like being cowboys, right? And so, I had a lot of song ideas while I was out there on the road, and a lot of those things wound up on my album, the 2004 record. And coincidentally, that record actually probably holds the most cuts, outside cuts, than any other of my records that I put out. I think out of that album, there were 15 sides, and I believe 7 or 8 had been recorded by some other artist somewhere else, and somehow who had heard it. But this is there was a lot of heartache out there because I would get back in from touring, and I would be up I was up like $5 or $6, right? I mean, after the 3 months of being out on the road, right? Thank God I had a publishing deal, and it was a songwriter. And my wife would have a baby on the hip, and she'd be like, so, is this going to happen like a lot from now on? And so, you hit those rocky patches, it's a hard business hard on the hearts, relationships and all that. So I wrote a lot of those kinds of songs out there, and this turned out to be one of them. I was on my way to McAllen to play a little place called Hillbillies, where I got a hold of some real bad agave and a tequila. And I don't do that anymore. I was looking out at the white lines and the telephone lines and the horizon. And I just thought, life is just a bunch of lines converging, intersecting. Those phone lines overhead make me want to call her, ask her if there still might be a chance. While the line on that horizon makes me want to keep on driving as the desert sun sinks into the sand. Oh, as I'm looking into my rearview mirror, see the lines of my past keep getting clearer and clearer, like the lines that we drew, the lines that we crossed, the lines on my face from the years that we lost. There's lines about us in those sad goodbye songs, and the lines on this highway go on and on. On and on. Well, the line I'm riding now leads straight into tomorrow. I don't think it ever circles back, 'cause the lines you walk in love, they're all so straight and narrow, and I never was much good at all of that. Oh, some lines just like memories run together. Some lines twist and turn, and some go on forever, like the lines that we drew, and the lines on this highway go on and on. On and on. And those phone lines overhead make me want to call her. Woo! So I did. She took me back, but I had to sleep in the doghouse for several months after that. We about ready for a little break?
No, not yet. But I just wanted to. Helen and I noticed something when we first recorded Tony. This song. Did y'all hear him do a harmony with himself?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure because I've never heard that in anybody.
Well, I used to drive engineers crazy with that. I'll never forget the yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. I would do vocals for a while. I made a sort of a living as a demo singer for other writers. I would go in the studio and sing their songs for them, so they could pitch it to other artists and everything. And some people would hire me because I was country, right? I sounded real country, right? And I could, well, excuse me, but I'd do that. And then some people had no idea, like I sang country, and they hired me because I sounded real rock and pop, So I would go in, and they never knew the country side because you kind of had to play the chameleon on that. But I'll never forget the first time I sang a demo. It was one of those, high demos, and I've got those harmony notes, Some people buy one of those machines. I don't even need to do that. And so I was doing that, and I came out, and he kept going, man, and he would look back and blame the people who were sitting in the lobby, and he would like, dudes, you all need to be quiet because I'm trying to hear if it's everything is cool in the pocket and the track, and they'd be like, we're not singing anything, and so he would go, come on, man, Tony, could you come in here? And so I came in there, and he would be like, is that you? I'm like, yeah, I don't have to sing harmonies because I just kind of do it when it goes down the first time, So it was a weird thing, and I almost got flogged for it a few times in the studio for doing that. But I couldn't really help it, Couldn't really help it. So, and what's cool about the record that I wound up doing, the Places album, is, like I said, there were several cuts that came off of that and other artists. And the capstone, Ray Price, I was just like, oh, wow, that is the cut that I can kind of like put that feather in my cap. I'm like, boy, a Ray Price cut, I remember calling my wife. I was like, hey, I just got a Ray Price cut. And she's like, you did? Yes. So she was like, oh, that is awesome, honey. So can you take the garbage out real quick? So anyway, never get too big for your britches. So, and then the next cool thing that happened, and not long after that, I got a call from a producer in town that was getting back together with one of my favorite groups of all time, a group by the name of Alabama. Do you all remember Alabama? Yeah, oh my gosh, drinking was forbidden in my Christian country home. I was like, oh my gosh, this is Alabama. This is Harold Shid's, producing Alabama's new album. They were doing a reunion record. And they were going to cut 8 sides on it, their big hits or biggest hits, and sing it with the contemporary artists like Jason Aldean and all that. But they wanted 2 originals, right? And Harold was calling me. I was set up for this phone call by Eddie Tidwell. And he was calling me because he really loved a song on that record. And he said, Tony, I would love to play this song for Randy Owen, if you wouldn't mind. And I'm like, hold on, man, yes, that would be awesome if you would do that. I said to consult with my people. And so I said, absolutely, that would be wonderful, man. And so he did, and Randy loved it. And they debuted this song. It was one of the 2 originals on the Alabama and Friends album. And they debuted the song on the Grand Ole Opry at the Ryman Auditorium. And I've had other songs sung at the Grand Ole Opry. I'm not bragging or anything. I'm just saying it's always a cool thing when a group or an artist sings your stuff on the Ryman stage. But, this was Alabama, right? And so that was the first song they played and sang, and the crowd went wild. And I was listening to it on the radio. The WSM, right, Rainey? Listened to it on the radio, and I was like, I wonder if he's going to say anything about me writing it. No, but that's okay. They still loved it, right? But it's a song called That's How I Was Raised. You give more than you take, bend more than you break. That's how I was raised. Look 'em in the eye, shake a hand tight, Jesus saves. That's how I was raised. I've walked the line a time or two, run through fire and I made it through. Sometimes that's just what it takes. I've read the Bible, I've cursed a man, I've done the worst and the best I can, but I still get up when I fall from grace, 'cause that's how I was raised. That's how I was raised. The old rugged cross, college basketball is how I was raised. Working in the fields, prayer before the meal, for heaven's sake. That's how I was raised. I've walked the line a time or two, run through fire and I made it through. Sometimes that's just what it takes. I've read the Bible, I've cursed a man, I've done the worst and the best I can, but I still get up when I fall from grace. It's how I was raised. We're only human when it comes right down to who we are. Yeah, and it's a constant battle, but all that really matters is what's deep down in your heart. And I've walked the line a time or two, run through fire and I made it through. Sometimes that's just what it takes. I've read the Bible, I've cursed a man, I've done the worst and the best I can, but I still get up when I fall from grace. 'Cause that's how I was raised. That's how I was raised. You give more than you take, you mend more than you break. That's how I was raised. Woo! Yeah. All right. Now, yeah. If y'all, I'll do one more because I could sit here all night. I'm like a surgeon, I don't have to use the bathroom for 10 hours. So they have to cut me short here. Let y'all use the restroom. And then I guess when I was down here touring, started the whole thing in Texas, as a touring artist, and was doing the best I could to ramp up tour dates. I was running a publishing company as well that was based out of Nashville. It was the owner was over there in Marshall, Texas. So I was kind of the publishing guy. And I thought, with my history of shutting businesses down, I might want to go ahead and get on the road so that when that does happen, I'll at least have some income. And kids were a little bit older at the time, so at least my wife wouldn't peer at me with two babies on the hip. So this one right here, kind of the one that I toured with first. I did a radio tour. I mean, we covered a lot of miles, you know. And this was on the Places album as well. And a guy by the name of David Nail recorded this song. He was a Nashville recording artist at the time. I think he was on EMI Records. He was a pretty cool cat, but he didn't make that record either. So. But I don't care anymore. You always set your sights on those big city lights. I could never change your mind. So I left Daddy's farm, traded in the country charm for the crowd and the neon sign. It just wasn't what I thought it'd be. We both know I'm back, right where I ought to be. So baby, if you ever wanna find me, you know right where I'll be, just across that county line. Baby, if you ever do think of me, decide that you still love me, leave that life behind. Just take that red dirt highway to a water tower skyline. Oh, oh, oh. There's not a lot to do, time barely moves, things stay pretty much the same. Oh, but I can sleep at night. There ain't no traffic lights, ain't no high rise down on Main. Just a courthouse on the old town square. Some people say this place, it's the middle of nowhere. But baby, if you ever wanna find me, you know right where I'll be, to cross that county line. Baby, if you ever do think of me, decide that you still love me, leave that life behind. Just take that red dirt highway to a water tower skyline. Fresh air, the fence lines, and the Texas sky. I guess they'll keep me here till the day I die. So baby, if you ever wanna find me, you know right where I'll be, just across that county line. Baby, if you ever do think of me, decide that you still love me, and leave that life behind. Just take that red dirt highway to a water tower skyline. Water tower skyline. Water tower skyline. All right, thank you all. So, I guess it's time for a potty break for everybody.
Do a little spill on your book real quick, because you got something to show them out there.
Oh, yeah, so I've got, this is, I won't bore you with the details, but I'm now singing my way through this book here, just so you know. It is a memoir that starts, it's a music journey memoir, so it starts just a little bit before my move to Nashville. And then sort of the twists and the turns that you take when you are on this path of chaos, right? Utter chaos. But it brings it up to date, right? I know a good friend of mine who lives in Conroe. I usually go down there and do a couple of house concerts for him every couple of years. And I was telling him I'm trying to get this ready, so maybe later on at the end of the year I could bring the memoir down there. And he said, hold on just a minute. Aren't you a little young for a memoir? And I was like, well, I mean, I just bring it up to the present, it's no big deal. But yeah, I'll have copies of these, and then after,
Ain't that young?
well, I know, that's what I told him, don't let me fool you, right? So, so at the end of the book, here are a couple of little places that kind of tie it off. But this memoir is really about me being at the end of an era, right? I mean, the end of the last picture in the book, of course, is, I think, pretty appropriate. And my wife, who was also a singer, she was actually singing on the Grand Ole Opry when we met. Yeah, I know. I was talking about a heart monitor. I was so before there were cell phones and whatnot, right? She always carried around a camera, and thank God she did. I was so mad at her all the time, like, honey, do you have to carry those little throwaway cameras around everywhere? She's like, yes, I do, and so glad she did, because most of these pictures, right? She just sang a couple songs in the Grand Ole Opry, and she yelled at Porter as he was leaving the stage after the show was over, and he turned around and she caught this shot of him waving so long, and so it's a real appropriate photo because it is I was sort of on the very tail end. I guess I shut the entire industry down, right? I mean, but it says, a so long wave to Deb after her night on the Opry from Porter Wagner, a fitting final picture of the end of an era. And so this book sort of traces my path, and kind of simultaneously there's a parallel ending of an industry era that was displaced and replaced pretty much by, the TikTok, Spotify, and
They're available. This is available in a living room near you,
Yeah,
right?
right now, right? Yes.
Show it to me and smile.
All right.
Yay.
So, if y'all want one, of course, you're welcome to it. I know the boss and the writer. And I had a good friend to help me edit this thing. He did really contributed so much for me because he's a book writer, and I'm a songwriter, so my attention span is very small. And so he kind of helped me through all of that process. But a lot of stories. Yeah, oh, yeah, sure.
Never seen your wife.
Well, I've got pictures of her too. Yeah, she was just a little cutie pie, as you can imagine. She's on the she's kind of a pistol. That's her right there on. She had her own show too. She was sort of a diva, right? She had her own show at the Opryland theme park.
So that's why you're like.
I know.
So where did the hypochondria come from?
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a long story, but I'll just suffice it to say, when my daughter was born, she had a little infection of some kind. It was like no big deal, but when they're really small, like a week old, you don't know what's wrong with them. So she had to go into the hospital, Vanderbilt there in the children's deal. And it turns out, so we're sleeping. It's over Christmas, by the way. And so Deb and I are sleeping at the hospital, just, going in and out. And, it's on the children's ward in there. And so all kinds of sadness and sad stories. And so we spend a whole week. And then finally, when the doc comes up and says, hey, I got good news. She just had a little weird UTI infection, but we got it. It's common in little girls, It's so she's fine. Everything is going to be okay. And like it was at that point, right, that I was like, I wanted to celebrate, so I went out and got a bunch of sushi. I was a big sushi fan, and sushi has all of this soy sauce. You put soy sauce, real salty wasabi. So I ate a bunch of that, and I was like, I'm just glad we're going home, get out of this hospital. My Savannah's fine, And this nurse comes in, and I'm like, I'm feeling a little bit, heavy after I eat this sushi, And, of course, I'm already kind of a basket case because of Tom Collins, as you remember.
Yeah.
And when the doc comes in and says that, and he leaves, after I get finished eating, I'm like, I feel kind of weird. But the worst thing a person like a hypochondriac can do is to say, I don't feel very good. Because once you speak it, it's, the words have power. So suddenly, when Deb looked at me and she was over there beside Savannah, she's like, well, I mean, you don't look too good either. And I'm like, oh, that threw me into major panic. So the nurse comes up and my wife, Deb, goes, hey, could you check his blood pressure, just see how he is? Well, anyway, so she comes over, and it's like a little high, but you know how nurses are, right? And they're like, ooh, you could have a stroke at any minute, And I'm like, what? So they're hauling me out on a gurney downstairs to the ER, which I don't even need to go, but I didn't know that at the time. Deb's there trying to take care of Savannah, So I remember, the last thing I remember is that I went downstairs. I was on that gurney, and of course, the first thing when they find out you're a musician, the doctor's like, "Well, how many drugs have you taken? Are you taking anything?" And I'm like, no. It's not like that. I don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, I drink a little bit every now and then, but no. He's like, well, what has been going on, please? And I'm like, so I'm telling him that for the last week I've been like, my daughter's been in the hospital, and he says, well, this is a natural reaction to the stresses of your daughter being sick. So not worry. Nothing bad going to happen, right? So he took my pulse. It was like 100, which is not bad. He goes and gets me this medication, man, and they put it in my arm, And all I can remember, it must have been real good stuff, because all I can remember is this nurse coming in going, like, and she would nudge me every 15 minutes and say, breathe. Breathe. That's what it was.
I know. It made it to me too.
Like, if I don't need oxygen, this is good stuff, right? So anyway, that started my path to hypochondria. And then after about I was a textbook case. They could have done a study on me, because after 8 months, it was over. But it made for some really good songs, But anyway, y'all use the restroom, and then 15 or 20 minutes. Yeah, cool. We'll finish her off.
The books are how much?
And the books are 20. And I mean, whatever you got is fine, And then if y'all do cards, I can do that too. You just hand them to me. I'll give them back to you in the mail. I'll send them to you. Give me your address, and I'll send them on back. Hey, I wanted to just mention before y'all head in there, I'm super excited. Now, I've got Tank and Hunter are from my I teach English Lit a couple days a week, and so this is probably a different side of me than they're used to seeing. But I want to thank them for coming out. And then I've got some very good friends, Kara D, and your husband, Dave. Yeah, right. And they came down. They drove 15 hours from West Virginia. I'm just kidding. So, Kara D, we grew up one house. She was up on the hill higher than I was, and she's a lot younger than I am. But she was just a little girl, as last time I remember her. And she walked in today, and I was like, do I know you? And so she's a professor. She's a teacher in Fort Worth at the Go Frogs, and she's a very, very successful. And your husband's a successful book author, right? So they have come out from Fort Worth, and all of you, of course, Kurt, and of course my very good friends from Edom over there, Jeff. Yay. Thank you all for coming over. It is always a special night to have with all of you, Kurt, and the rest of Kurt. You brought like a dozen people, right? Yeah. So that's always nice. And of course, Randy and Helen, it's always a pleasure to come out and play and entertain some folks with some songs. So I hope you're having a good time.